The Law Be With You podcast show, also known as Christian Fandom Geek on YouTube, is now part of the Red 5 network. Red 5 is a network of podcast shows aimed at bringing great quality content, especially Star Wars. And so look forward to some awesome collaborations on the Red 5 network with the Law Be With You podcast show. Welcome back to the Law Be With You podcast show. We've got Omar on again, a very knowledgeable guest. As I say, a font of knowledge in cosmic wizardry, especially in lore, canon, comic books, and Star Wars. I hope you can live up to that title, Omar.
I'm getting worried now.
We only get the best collaborators on the Law Be With You podcast show. And if you've not subscribed yet on our YouTube channel, Christian Fandom Geek, please get on there, hit a sub, hit a like button, and comment as well. And if you agree or disagree with any views that we are espousing on the show, please let us know. We're very interested in dialoguing with you guys, the fans. We love fandom, and we appreciate you listening to the podcast show. Okay, we're going to talk about X-Men now.
Yeah.
So all you X-Men fan out there, this is for you. Any Marvel fans, this is for you. Comic book fans, this is for you. Omar, I know that you're a big X-Men geek.
Yes, I am.
Tell us about your love of X-Men.
It's just amazing. It is like, for me, it's just like the best comics that you can get. I've always just had a really close affinity to the characters and the storylines. It's the comic book that I've collected since I was probably about 10, so it's been well over 25 years now.
You're giving your
and and I've collected back issues and stuff like that. So it's a universe in its own. Separate from it is connected to the Marvel universe as it is, but it's its own thing too. There's multiple teams, there's multiple characters, there's different timelines. It's always been one of my biggest loves.
Okay, all right. I like X-Men as well. I think but obviously I know how much your passion is for the X-Men, and I love that. And I got into the X-Men lore through the movies, not the comic books. So it's a different experience to yours. So obviously, and we will brush on the films a little bit later. So if you kind of have a strong opinion at home listening to this about the films, or if you listen to this at work, we will talk about the films. But first of all, before that, who is your favorite X-Men character and why?
My favorite X-Men character, who is actually one of my favorite characters of all time, is Cyclops.
Okay.
He's the field leader of the X-Men. As a kid, as a glasses wearing geek, he was the representation of actually having a superhero that wears glasses. Was something that was very close to me, and I just remember seeing him with the visor and just thinking that was the coolest thing. I mean, this is before I really got into Star Trek and saw Geordie LaForge with them. But
his visor,
but so I've always been a fan of Scott Summers. Cyclops, and just his character, just this whole idea of what he represents in the lore. He's the true believer. He is kind of the one that really believes in the dream of coexistence, and it's been very interesting recently of how he's had to deal with how the world has changed and stuff like that, and he's just I still think he's one of the most compelling characters in comic books.
Yeah, brilliant. And he always looks so visually amazing, doesn't he? His power, like in the comic books, obviously, especially as comic books have sort of gone in terms of how they're drawn these days, and how the sort of technology you can have to make comic books look so vivid. He looks amazing. But obviously in the films, how do you feel about him, how he's portrayed in the movies, how he looks, and how the general sort of direction they went within the sort of I guess those X-Men films in the 90s, weren't they, really?
Yeah, well, this is big sigh from me, really.
Oh,
I
here we go. Here we go.
Yes,
Don't hold
Cyclops.
back.
Cyclops has. I don't think Cyclops, outside of possibly, and I say that possibly because the original '90s cartoon, I
Yeah,
don't think Cyclops has actually ever been done justice outside of the comic books.
yeah,
I think they've always sidelined him. The thing that I've always found that made Wolverine great is that
mm,
Cyclops is his counterpoint.
yeah,
Not just in kind of as a love rival to Jean Grey, but
mm,
just philosophically, they kind of have very, very different viewpoints, but they have a mutual respect for each other,
yeah,
for the most part, anyway.
yeah,
But so I've always thought that them two kind of characters rubbing off each other has always been like the spark that really does kind of get the X-Men and kind of the conversation going about what particular mission they're doing and what's happening.
mm,
So I think the way that Cyclops has been portrayed, I don't think he's ever been really portrayed as the true leader of the X-Men that he is. He's been the kind of the guiding force, the kind of the general, marshalling a whole kind of species. And I don't think any
wow,
of the TV shows, TV or films have ever kind of portrayed him in that way. They've just kind of portrayed him in a kind of Boy Scout way. I mean, it's
yeah,
almost the way that they kind of done with Captain America or Superman. That he does fit that archetype.
yeah,
And with all three of those characters, they actually have a lot more to them than that. But I think even more so with Cyclops, they've never really kind of broken the mold and kind of dug a bit deeper into what that character stands for, what he's been through, and his kind of relations with not just the wider X-Men, but even in his own family.
right, okay, okay. So you mentioned a really good point there about this sort of archetype, and obviously on the lobby with you, we love talking about archetypes.
Yeah.
And if if you haven't listened to previous episodes, go and listen to them. They're on Christian Fandom Geek on YouTube, and they're also on most podcast players. And you will listen to back episodes where we talk about archetypes, and they're very important in good storytelling, aren't they?
Yes, they
And
are.
so you've talked about this archetype here of, I suppose we could call it the American dream.
Yeah.
Um, and you've got obviously Superman, you've got Captain America, and you've got Cyclops in there. So, what is that archetype, and why is it so important in comic books?
I think it's kind of the guiding light. It's the what that archetype, this kind of Boy Scout one, is kind of where everything. It's kind of like the foundation.
Mm.
And then you can have other characters kind of bounce off that. I mean, you were saying about the kind of the American dream with Superman,
Yeah.
and Captain America. With Cyclops, it's a little different,
Mm.
because he represents the other. Um, I mean, in a wider scale, the X-Men are the other. They are, then they're only together because of what they have. And
Mm.
Cyclops is the kind of the archetypal activist, the kind of the organizer. It's just
Mm.
like how Martin Luther King
Yeah.
or Malcolm X, or even people that was involved in the Stonewall riots and stuff like that. I mean, you can actually kind of move that analogy of like
Yeah.
civil rights movement, gay rights, and stuff like that
Yeah.
into kind of the X-Men, because it is kind of the outside of the kind of society. And
Yeah. Yeah.
and he's kind of seen as that person, just like you have those activists that is that kind of seen as a leader or a voice of that particular community.
Of course. Of course. And so you get him as I kind of say the active. You think of Star Wars, you think of like the rebel, isn't it? It's that kind
Yeah,
of like you're fighting against the Empire type thing, isn't it? And
yeah.
so you feel like he's certainly not being represented or portrayed, to a great extent on screen. Has it's a really good character in the comic books. He's not just one dimensional sort of thing, but in the film
No.
he's a bit one dimensional.
Yeah, they kind of give a lot to Wolverine, and they put No, I'm not saying. I mean, Wolverine is a great character, not
Yeah,
particularly one of my favorites. So, but I read it and everything. But as I was saying that with Cyclops being the counterbalance to Wolverine, it makes Wolverine better. But they've kind of moved a lot of what Cyclops is to Wolverine, which
yeah.
is I've always found really odd. I mean, don't get me started on X-Men 3, X-Men: The Last Stand. I mean, they had the disservice of killing him off screen. I mean, that was just the worst.
It was pretty shocking, wasn't it? It was
Yeah,
pretty shocking. I don't know what. Now I'm trying to remember who the director is for that film because
Brett Ratner.
yes, and obviously Brett Ratner at that time was considered, well, certainly in terms of Hollywood elite, he was a very well known, popular director in terms of
Yeah.
he would get a lot of big films. I don't really know what's happened to him since actually, but
Well, he got. Well, I know he got. He was involved in the whole Me Too situation.
wow,
A
so
lot of allegations about him.
yeah, so it hasn't been that great for him then. Okay.
No.
Moving on swiftly then. Okay.
An interesting fact: he wasn't the original person that was tapped to do X-Men 3 after Bryan Singer left the X-Men
Yeah.
franchise. It was actually Matthew Vaughn.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Law Be With You podcast show on Christian Fandom Geek. I really appreciate every one of you who listen to the show via podcast player or on YouTube as Christian Fandom Geek. We're also on the Red 5 network as well. Really appreciate all of you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of this awesome project and enterprise. I've got some great collaborators on the show as well, having some awesome episodes, and I'm really glad that you are part of the ride. Keep listening to the show. Also, you can follow the show on Twitter. If you put in the Law Be With You podcast show or Law Be With You, it will come up on Twitter as well. So if you want to interact with the show, leave a comment and leave a suggestion for future episodes. Would be really happy to engage with you as fans of the show. Keep safe, and we'll be with you very, very soon on the Law Be With You podcast show.